Thanks.
You're on, Dan.
Oh, welcome to this meeting of the Milton Planning Board. It's already our 15th meeting of the fiscal year, and we're still going strong. Why don't we go around this full table and introduce ourselves? I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman.
Edward Duffy, member.
Michael Kelly, member.
Brian Furrs, member.
Emily Martin, admin.
Bill Clark, planning director.
Emily Ennis, member.
All right. Now, Ed, you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to say a few words. I wish to say a few words about the site of the old theater / new restaurant. Franklin Street, Adams Street, Church Place, Mechanic Pierce, all the way to Granite Place on one end and Granite Avenue on the other end. I've been a member of the planning board for approximately 12 years. During that time, I estimate that we've had maybe 6 or 7, quote, traffic and parking studies, unquote, by the applicants for various reasons, such as the place I just described. In all of these cases, the applicant paid for all the costs of the study, which would be done by professional engineers under the direction of the town. The proposal for the old East Milton Theater is just such an example. However, such a traffic and parking plan as I have just described has not been conducted, no matter what someone states otherwise. I only ask why.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, please, one more page. Regarding the planning board meeting on January 22nd and the subject of a new restaurant, I desire to express my regret to my colleagues on the planning board and our staff, as well as proponents and their staff regarding the restaurant, and to the audience attending that meeting, as well as the cable television audience. I was out of order by use of a vulgarity, and I apologize. And now, Mr. Chairman, I resign from the planning board. I wish everyone well, and I ask God to bless our beautiful town. Good night. Excuse me. Thank you.
Well, let's, my feeling is that there is a procedure that you go through if you are going to resign a public office, and I hope that Ed thinks about it carefully before pursuing that procedure. In any event, this is, I can say nothing beyond that. So let's discuss the date of our next meeting. Which is February 26th. Right? Everyone on board with February 26th?
Mr. Chair, I will not be able to attend on February 26th.
Okay, so we have to reschedule February 26th because the Thayer special permit needs 4 votes, and if Ed follows through with his resignation, all 4 of us have to be present during the hearing.
I'm gone the entire, I'm free on the 23rd, and that's it. I'm away after that.
What is the 23rd?
It's a Monday evening.
Ned?
Oh, wait, hang on. No, I'm wrong. I have a conflict.
You have it on the 23rd?
Yeah, I've got to work conflict on the 23rd.
What about the following week?
I'll be back on the 4th and can accommodate any, I'll work around whatever.
March 4th?
4th, 5th, 6th, whichever, well, not 6th, probably.
March 4th is a Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes, I'm free on the 4th.
So kind of meeting scheduled for the 5th.
There's a what meeting?
Okay, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we can move.
We can move that.
If necessary. Okay, the 4th.
I'm fine, 4th or 5th, whichever.
Either the 4th or 5th is fine for me.
I've got a
fourth.
conflict on the fifth.
Okay.
The fourth.
All right, I did a set of minutes, but I don't see them here. Do we have them here?
What about do we want to do the other?
Minutes,
in
well,
March?
you have a conflict on the
12th.
12th, right, Emily?
Okay, the 12th. What about the 12th?
I have a conflict on the 12th.
Any other night that week, or are
I
you gone
cannot
the
do
week?
that week.
Okay.
No,
What-
I'm
You
booked up.
can't do that week.
No, I'm booked up that week.
So we would probably go the 18th?
18th or 19th, I'm free.
19th is the Thursday, I prefer the
We have
19th.
a no.
19th doesn't,
We go on the week of,
This is where one of those little,
we need to coordinate with
We
our,
need
we
to do
need to
that.
coordinate our vacation schedules better
Yes,
by the
we
sounds of things,
And work schedules.
and work schedules.
little, this is, all right, when
Gone
can we
that whole
do
week,
it? We're going to
right.
meet on the 4th. We could meet again that week, I suppose.
4th and 5th.
Only the 6th. I've got a
Oh, you have
conflict
a
on the 5th.
conflict on the
Yeah.
5th, you said that.
I just got that yesterday, so.
Well, it would be fair, I think, would be the major thing on the 4th. So we could just go late.
Do you need to do 26th? We were going to do the zoning bylaws on the 26th, I think, Alan?
Has the 26th already been publicized? Okay, so then we're good. Yeah.
We were supposed to do
But we need to do it on the 4th then.
You're going to have the public hearing for the article on the 4th.
On the
Yes.
4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to move the townhouse committee out,
That was on the 5th.
and that means,
The townhouse is on for the 5th, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no conflict.
okay,
You see, we've already moved it
okay.
to free up the 4th.
Which I'm now busy on again. We moved it for me, but oh
Actually, it
well.
works good. So the 12th is going to be what now?
We haven't decided. What about the week of the 23rd?
You don't like the 12th?
We're all,
The week of the 12th is booked.
Okay, March 4th, it seems to me we probably can, if we start early and go, well, we've got the zoning article, right?
Yeah.
So we would do that at 6:45. And then we'd
day after
probably
that.
be up for there at 7:30.
just scratch the 12th.
Well, the 12th is going to have to be scratched.
Sounds that way. Why, but not replace it?
Well, you could replace it with the week of the 23rd.
We already.
Because
and
you're booked the week
We've
of the
got March
16th.
We've
26th.
got the
Is that a
26th
bad
already.
date for someone?
26th is fine.
26th is
your
fine, yeah.
normal.
Yeah,
That's our
yeah,
normal
yeah.
meeting.
So I'm fine with
Okay,
that.
so all we're doing is replacing March 12th with March 4th.
And scrapping the 26th of February.
We're scrapping a
You're
meeting.
scrapping the 26th of February for March 4th,
Oh.
and doing away with the 12th of March.
Okay, so we've actually saved a meeting.
yes, we
Yes.
eliminated a meeting.
Well, that is efficiency, isn't it?
Yes, it would be great if you could meet 3 times in March, then you wouldn't lose, because otherwise you're going to lose a meeting.
We need a meeting?
All right, when can we meet after the 4th? What's the first time?
Sounds like it's the,
The first time I could meet after the 4th would be the 6th. It's a Friday.
is
We
it-
have
is it-
met on a Friday before.
Is a 2-day gap I mean, we could always scratch the 6th if,
That's a Friday.
What's wrong with the 12th? The 12th is not available?
I'm not available on the 12th, but that doesn't mean
we
the other
need
members can't
everyone.
meet it.
We need everyone.
I missed that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
and then Mike's gone the following week.
Oh, Mike's gone, okay.
Yep. Mike's not available that week. I'm not available that week.
What about the week of the 26th? Could we meet earlier than the
Yeah.
26th?
Yeah?
I'm in DC. I couldn't be here till probably 8 o'clock on the 25th.
I could do the 25th. I could do a later meeting on the 25th.
That's assuming I can get here.
Do the 25th, and then we could do the 26th if necessary? Is,
Hope I
does
make my
that
flight.
cotton to anyone's fancy?
Are you suggesting 5th?
Fourth.
4th,
Fourth,
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, 4th?
25th, and 26th if needed.
I think that would be fine. I mean, I'm assuming at least one more night of the public hearing for fair, as I know we've got drainage plans, but we haven't presented yet.
So that would be March 4th,
Right.
and it might be wrapped up then, it might not be.
It might not be. If it is, then you'll need, then the 25th, we would presumably be ready to vote to approve the special permit as hopefully as drafted. If you're not wrapped up on the 4th, be back on the 25th, hopefully wrapping up. And
With it 26th if we,
potentially approving.
And if I, for some reason, don't make the 25th, we're only one day late, and I can watch it in the
You can watch it in
afternoon
the
and vote on the
afternoon.
26th.
Yeah, that could work.
Because I think my flight lands at 7:45.
You wouldn't be here by 8. You won't have your luggage by 8. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they'll just drop me.
Get a parachute, you'll be fine.
you know.
all right.
I know, we're in the flight path.
I think that we've determined when we're going to meet. Now it's time for citizen speak. Anyone who wants to speak on a matter that doesn't involve East Milton theater projects or landscaping businesses should feel free to address the board. All right, seeing no one, we will go on to an A&R plan.
This book back there. Terry.
Hi, my name is Terry McGuire. I don't know did I need to bring a,
No, you're good.
okay.
You all have a copy of the A&R plan in front of you.
We do.
Address? 118 Woodland Road.
Oh, you rearranged your stuff.
This must be it.
That's it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so what are you doing?
Well, we have two parcels that are together, or that are separate parcels. One the house sits on, and there's a parcel attached to it, or behind it, that's right now a separate parcel. And if you look at it's the one at the top, it's an oddly configured parcel.
Tennis court
Yeah,
parcel?
it has a tennis court, it has an outbuilding, and right now, they're just two separate parcels, and so we've thought about it, and if, I guess if we were going to separate it and sell it at some point, then we'd want to keep it separate, but the reality is that it's basically the backyard area for the house, and so our idea was to just combine the two lots.
And what is the, you've got, it's registered and unregistered.
Can I throw something in here?
Can you throw something in?
Yes. Presently, the owner has 3 lots. He's going to take 2 of the lots, put them together. So there is no, the only thing that you're going to wind up changing is the square footage of the lot itself. What he had for frontage stays as his frontage, he just adds to it.
It's going to, it's going
Increase the
to,
size of his lot.
yeah, he's going to make 2 lots into 1 lot, and when you do that, the resulting lot is going to be bigger.
Bigger, there you go.
It's nice.
Well, that's a good plan.
Have no objections to that.
Anyone, shall we have a motion to authorize Mr. Clark to endorse this plan as not requiring subdivision approval?
So moved?
And a second. And do we have any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. 2 Adams Street, Mr. Ned Corcoran.
Good evening, Ned Corcoran here on behalf of Extra Space Storage, which is the owner of property at 2 Adams Street, and I think at least two of you will recall that we spent quite a bit of time permitting a series of developments at that property. This is my copy of the permit book. There are federal, state, and local permits. We achieved the second only Chapter 91 variance granted by DEP for work in a flowed tidelands, and got all the way to the point of a building permit for construction of the new building. I've got a memo that I emailed in, and I think you each have a copy, but permit to build this building on Adams Street. I think we spent 2 full nights debating what the exterior of the material would be for the center structure.
2 well-spent nights.
Yes.
Yes.
John Zikowitz came up with the notion of granite in stone infill. So the first permit, which permitted the development of the 2 old mill buildings into condominiums, 7 condominium units, was granted in late 2007, December of 2007. We went back and permitted the new building butting up against Adams Street in 2008. Excuse me, May of 2007, the first permit was granted. December of 2007, this permit was granted. After it was granted, we discovered, because of conditions associated with groundwater in the soil, we had to raise the profile by 4 feet, and we then needed a variance. We got a variance from the Board of Appeals in April and back to the Planning Board for an amendment to the special permit, which was dated May 24, 2008. As part of the work in preparation for this, including the fact that we paid for and we issued a building permit, we paid tens of thousands of dollars for a building permit that was issued, installed a water line connecting to the town's water main on Adams Street to service the new building, did all of the other site work required under the special permit, built the pocket park down towards the back, built the connection to the MBTA station, built, redid the footpath, the footbridge over the river, did all of those other things. The only thing that didn't get done in accordance with the permit was the construction of the new building. And in 2009, after the building permit had been issued, the economy hit the skids. The 7 condominium units that were permitted in the mill buildings have never been sold as condominiums. They were unable to be financed for purchase because lenders wouldn't lend to the first owner in, and so they are rented, fully occupied, but they are rented. And so one of the conditions in the special permit as amended provided that construction needed to begin within 1 year of the issuance and complete within 3 years of the issuance. So the expiration date of the permit, therefore, would be May 24, 2011, but for the economy and but for the Permit Extension Act that was approved initially in 2010 by the legislature and then again amended in 2012. And that extension provides that, in part, that all permits in place, state municipal permits, would be fully extended for 4 years from the date that they would otherwise have expired. And guidance that was issued by the Department of Housing and Economic Development confirms that a 4-year extension would runs from the date that the permit would expire. And they gave an example in that, very similar to this, that if a permit was set to expire in September of 2011, then it would be extended until September of 2015. In this case, the permit is valid until May 24 of 2015. We are currently working with the building commissioner on a review of the plans of the building. The building permit is good until 2 weeks from today. It was extended in August. And a condition was that we needed to affirm the validity of the underlying permits. There's clear case law that a variance that has been granted, if you have recorded it and have secured a building permit and done all things to act in accordance with the variance, then the variance stays alive as long as the building permit stays alive. A couple of recent cases on that. There is not as much case law dealing with special permits, but as I read the provisions of the Permit Extension Act, it's pretty clear that this permit is valid until May 24th. I think the board has the ability, without public hearing, to extend that permit again for a period of 6 months under the state law. Beyond that, we may have to reapply for a public hearing to affirm. But I think May 24th, it's our expectation that after meeting with the, working with the building commissioner, we're meeting with him tomorrow with a team of architects and code specialists to work out some details about the differences between the building as designed under the 6th edition of the building code and the 8th edition of the building code, which is currently in effect. That we think that we'll be able to get to yes on the schedule and scope of things. But I think for purposes of the planning board, I need to address you and at least in my opinion, I think you have the authority to if we're good till May, and we'll be back as appropriate, put it that way. But I wanted to brief you on the status of things. Extra Space has agreed to sell the development rights. Currently negotiating with Jack Dolly and Northland Residential to purchase those rights. They've made a substantial offer to purchase those rights. And they have agreed to work together while they negotiate price and purchase and sale to keep permits alive and moving forward. So the hope is that by the time the snow has melted, we're ready to go with a new permit. One thing that we'll be doing, and we'll be discussing with Joe Prondak when we meet tomorrow, is we'll be doing a side-by-side analysis of the differences between the building as designed and what would be necessary if designed under the 8th edition of the building code. One thing we do understand is the 8th edition of the building code allows wood frame, high-rise wood frame. So it is possible that we could go, this is a brick and steel and concrete building, that we could come up to the level of over the restaurant on the first floor with concrete and steel frame and go wood frame above that. That would require at least some interior reworking of the building. We don't know whether it would require a change in the exterior facade. If yes, we'd have to come back and amend the special permit to allow the change in the appearance of the building, because the permit is pretty clear. It applies to this design and the floor plans, etc. But if it's possible and it is more cost effective to go wood frame, then we will take that avenue. So that's a sort of a long-winded way around of saying that the good news is that this thing is moving. We think that it's going to happen. I've been cajoling both of my clients to keep this thing alive. The economy really put the pressure on this thing, but you know, in terms of the build out of the two mill buildings, the site work, the permitting costs, the design work, more than $1 million, well more than $1 million has been spent on this thing, and it ought to have the ability to be complete. So.
Not to mention significant public time in the original review. This was a very long and complex process. I remember it well because it was one of the first big processes I went through when I came on the board. So it went through a very complex public input process.
I could teach a full law school class.
So what, as I understand it, I mean, this permit requires completion of the building by May 15th, and clearly the building isn't going to be completed. So you'd like to amend the special permit to push out that date to a date that the building can be completed within. So, and you've got time, we can advertise it, et cetera, and then, you know, hopefully, if you're going to do other stuff, you want other stuff done that's going to require amendment of the special permit. We could do it all at once if you knew what it was.
Yeah, don't know what it is yet.
Right. Now, I'm simply saying we're going to have to, before May 15th, have a hearing on whether or not to extend this for probably 2 years from May 15th. That sounds easy enough to do.
I think so. I just thought it was important to meet because given the deadline with the existing building permit, I wanted to.
Right. Well, you had to explain about why why this didn't expire years ago, so that took a little time. Okay, so you will be back
We'll be back.
with that.
And hopefully with a,
Now, we're going to go to the Thayer Nursery application, and we have Mr. Prondak here at our request. And why don't, I think Mr. Prondak should probably, unless the board thinks that we should have him cool his heels just to see how we can operate, I think we should consult him about what we wanted him here for.
Good evening. Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner.
I guess we wanted to hear from you what the general legal thicket looks like.
I can do that.
Okay. So we're going to now commence the hearing on an application by, is it by Thayer Nursery? Thayer Nursery, for a special permit to conduct a landscaping business. It's been duly advertised, and the hearing is now underway. And so why don't you tell us what you can? Yes.
I think technically the hearing commenced January 8th and it was continued to.
Continue to tonight.
this evening.
All right, so not only, we will simply say this is a continuation of a hearing on the application of Thayer Nursery. But with that slight change, you can proceed.
Okay, so I would start by saying that, of course, it's not my intention to sway the board one way or another in the decision on this special permit, and I think that's just good to say for the record. I do have a presentation that I've somewhat prepared, more of a verbal presentation in 3 parts. One is to talk about the challenges of existing administration enforcement of special permits and uses such as this, including Thayer Nursery, which is the target of this hearing. And then to talk about some things in the bylaw that I see as a concern, and some of that review I've done with town council, in particular Lauren Galvin, who brought up some additional points that I didn't see. And then finally, I would like to probably recommend some conditions should a permit issue. And of course, unless you want me to not do all that.
I think the board would like you to do that. Is that the sense of the board?
Absolutely.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, so there's been a lot of back and forth over alleged violations, enforcement. So just a quick rundown of that process. If someone alleges a violation to my office, we have to do an investigation. We have to confirm the violation. If we do that, we then have to send out an enforcement notice. Or in the alternative, if we find no violation, we would send out, in most cases, a letter saying that we find no violation to the complainant. Every letter that I send out is appealable to the permit granting authority, and in past history, that has been the Zoning Board of Appeals. In the case of Thayer Nursery, over the past 2 or 3 years, almost every letter that I have sent out has been appealed by either a complainant or the holder of the permits. So the Board of Appeals then has to conduct a hearing and determine whether or not there was in fact a violation, or if there was no violation, whether they uphold my decision, or whether they overturn my decision. Once they complete that process, that is then appealable to Superior Court. And I think it's fair to say that almost every decision of the Board of Appeals over the past couple of years on this property has been appealed to Superior Court. Currently, there are 5 cases pending in Superior Court, 3 filed by abutters, and, I'm sorry, 2 filed by abutters, and 3 filed by the holders of the permits. It's pretty clear to me. So, and I think as I go on, you'll see even more some of the reasons this becomes so, in some cases, convoluted and challenging. So to add to that a little bit, I'll sort of segue a little bit into the bylaw. Chapter 48, Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 8 says that any appeal goes back to the permit granting authority initially. So in this case, if a permit is issued, the planning board is the permit granting authority, not the zoning board of appeals. However, in paragraph 1 of the bylaw, it says that upon application by the building commissioner during the term or extended term of the special permit may be revoked by the Board of Appeals. So I have to wonder, and this was brought up by town council, was that intended to go back to the Board of Appeals, or was it intended, should that really say planning board? Because if it is intended to be the Board of Appeals, I think that presents another set of challenges in that the Board of Appeals then has to review the special permit that the planning board issued and decide whether there is a violation as opposed to the actual permit granting authority. But that would only be in the case of me bringing an action. If I issue an enforcement order or fail to issue an enforcement order, the appeal by either the permit holder or an abutter still comes back to this board. So that one piece of language there, again, presents a bit of a challenge. The other thing I wanted to touch on that has particularly presented challenges to the town over the years, not only with me and current Board of Appeals, but with my predecessor and prior Boards of Appeals, is the farm exemption that Thayer Nursery enjoys. Some of the things that are regulated by the special permit cross the line of things that are allowed as a matter of right by the farm exemption, and the line is not clear cut. And I think it's even challenging for the courts to sort that out in some cases. So I'll get into that a little further, a little bit further down the road. So then I wanted to go into, and I kind of, it'll somewhat go in order. Some of the things I see in the special permit itself. And the first one comes in the second paragraph under purpose, where it just simply talks about reasonable limits. It's the last sentence of the second paragraph, reasonable limits on amount of infrastructure, equipment, and operations. And what I will say probably over and over again is that it's important here to be specific, because challenges for the board and for me, for the abutters, for the nursery, have been non-specifics. For example, an amount of mulch or an amount of firewood. To say something like an entity would be allowed to keep an amount of mulch consistent with its business use or its expected business practice is not enough, because, and this is happened similarly up at Eagle Farm as well. Amount of mulch, we really need to, in my opinion, specify yardage and how much can be kept at any one time and what the turnover rate is. You know, for example, if you say, if a board were to say, okay, you can have 100 yards of mulch or other bulk product, well, if they turn over 100 yards of mulch in a month or two, that's probably not a big deal. But if they turn over 100 yards of mulch in 3 days, that means a lot of truck traffic and a lot more disturbance to the neighborhood. So there are those kinds of challenges involved. Further down in section 2, where it talks about definition of landscape business, and it says install and maintains lawns, trees, yards, shrubs, gardens, patios, related grounds, and other outdoor areas which are owned by others. In speaking to Thayer Nursery in particular, for example, some of the things they have done in the past, one of their business things was to construct stairs, front stairs and back stairs to houses. I don't consider that landscaping. They happen to build it out of granite stone, prefabricated granite stone, which can also be used as a landscaping product. But just because it's used as a landscaping product, it shouldn't necessarily be allowed to be used as a construction material as well. So that means the landscaping business is morphing from landscape to actual construction. There's also a fine line on retaining walls. Retaining walls that are truly used for landscaping purposes clearly should be allowed, but to go to another extreme, maybe an absurd extreme, but retaining walls that are built along the Southeast Expressway to retain a road up above, they're both retaining walls, but there needs to be a line drawn as to what can be permitted. Stone, in further down in the definition, it talks about the business authorized to sell tree, shrub, sod, seed, loam, mulch, and related material, and may be authorized to sell stone, stone dust, gravel, pavers, landscape ornamentation, timbers. So again, I think tree, shrub, sod, seed, loam, that's all pretty clear. Nursery stock, we've looked at that over and over again, and there's no fine line there, pretty obvious. But when we get into mulch and stone dust, again, there should be a specific, it would be helpful to be specific. And then when we get into pavers and things of that nature, there are many different kinds of pavers, there are many different kinds of products for masonry retaining walls. There is a fine line between masonry supply and landscape supply. So are we selling, there somehow needs to be quantification of the pavers and masonry products. And I say this as if it's easy, but
saying be specific on the actual material itself, the type of pavement? Are you going to say quantity, or are you saying both?
I think it's more quantity, because the other challenge too is that product, a lot of the products that we have today weren't available 10 years ago, and products change, and so not so much product specific, but I think somehow amounts.
Product specific could get outdated quite quickly, as you say.
Yeah, yeah. The next one that present an enormous challenge to myself, the board, and everyone involved in the paragraph after definitions, before number 3, authorization of an activity shall be at the level no greater than the level of the activity existing in 2012. One of the prior special permits said very specifically that the level of the business at Thayer Nursery shall be no greater than the level that occurred in 1967. Nobody is able to say for sure exactly what that level was. It's very hard to define. So all of us sitting at the table we may know what that level is right now. But 5 years from now, after I hit the lottery and moved to Hawaii and everybody else is elsewhere, the people that take our places aren't necessarily going to know what was the level in 2012 unless it's spelled out. And then, as we move on to number 4, Part D, the drainage plan. There have been complaints about the drainage, existing conditions. Very hard for any agency to verify the complaint. Because of X and X drainage, my basement filled with water. May be true, may very well be true, but it could just be that because of the excessive rainstorm on May 13th, my basement filled with water. There's no way for the town to prove that. So my suggestion on drainage is that all we can simply do on that, the drainage, whether it's Thayer Nursery or any development, we have a professional engineer design the drainage, and a professional engineer to certify that the drainage was installed as designed. So that same designer knows all the ins and outs of what's needed to achieve that person's plan, that same person go and certify what they proposed. And with the understanding that when an engineer designs a drainage plan, they take into account existing conditions, and they use a projected stormwater standard. What is the average rainfall of the average big storm every 25 years, or something like that? So if sometime during the course of the future we get a rainstorm that exceeds that, there's likely going to be a problem with the drainage. A drainage plan, even certified by an engineer, isn't necessarily going to be a catch-all. There will and can be some problems down the road. It just, and maybe I say that somewhat for the public too, that we don't have the wherewithal to perfect that process. Nobody does. In section pardon me for 1 second. In section 4H, building plans, I just think it's important to show that, or to somehow ensure that any future building on the site, I think, probably should come back for an amendment to the special permit. Or the special permit should say that certain buildings can be allowed by the building commissioner. You know, if they wanted to put in an 8x10 garden shed, do we just hold that to the typical accessory building standard that currently exists in the general bylaw? Or does a change like that require an amendment to the special permit? I think that should be clear. And then there's some discussion in in 4J, the mitigation plan. Actually, I didn't properly mark that, but let me just say this about sound buffering, and there's some talk about putting sound buffering on fences. It's a good idea, and it absolutely should be done, but like drainage, it is not a perfect science. We can put sound buffering on fences to help reduce and muffle and mitigate some of the noise, but some of what a landscape/nursery does is noisy and offensive. There are times when they have to use chainsaws. You can put all the sound acoustical panels on the fences you want, it's not going to stop the noise of the chainsaws. So, and even I've seen in other towns where they've conditioned the special permit and relied on the DEP has a general noise pollution standard that says noise shall not be more than 10 decibels over ambient. But what they refuse to get into is that ambient varies greatly. Ambient varies with humidity, ambient varies night and day, ambient varies with temperature. So if a standard like that were to be placed on a particular place, you would have to do an ambient sound study. So, again, I guess I just say that, that even though, you know, if a permit is granted, I'm sure the board will likely require some sound mitigation. It will not be, no matter what we do, it won't be an exact science. Firewood, again, I think it should be quantified. And the bylaw does speak to the quiet loading of trucks. That, and there's another section which I have further down about dumpsters. The bylaw also talks about the quiet loading of dumpsters. So steel dump trucks and steel dumpsters are giant echo chambers. And when they're empty and you dump a load of firewood into them, they're going to make noise, unless you were to line the bottom of them with hay or something like that. So, again, I think there has to be an understanding that, yeah, maybe you load the dumpster or load the truck over here behind the building, behind the fence, so something blocks the noise. But some of this perfection can't be achieved. But again, just to reiterate on the firewood, quantity should be spelled out, how many cords of wood can be kept, and the turnover rate, I think is important, because the turnover rate really ties back to the amount of truck traffic and loading traffic and noise and all of that. In section In section 7C, operators of landscaping business, an operator or an authorized representative shall be on site during regular business hours, and if any complaints are received on account of noncompliance with any such requirement, terms and conditions shall promptly cause such noncompliance to be cured. Again, from my perspective as the enforcement agent, the administrator, the town zoning administrator, this is, oftentimes when I get a complaint of noncompliance, there's the other side that says, no, we're not noncompliant. So it triggers an investigation, an enforcement order, and then often likely a subsequent appeal. In section D, the backup horns shall be modulated to the minimum level deemed permissible by applicable law. We probably should find out what that applicable law is, because that can change over time. Whoever writes that law and says, okay, the backup beeper shall be so many megahertz, or however they measure sound, that could change down the road, and there needs to be some way to verify or quantify that.
When you say that, are you looking for us to fix a level, or are you looking for us to be specific on what law we're talking about?
I think specific on what law.
So that you know where, if it changes, which law to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Understood.
Or if it's challenged, we know which regulation we're going by, or having to hold
Understood.
the special permit holder to.
Okay.
In section E, on-site traffic loading deliveries, there shall be no, and further down, almost toward the end of that paragraph, there shall be no loading or use of noisy equipment on Sundays, provided that use of equipment for loading of plant and nursery materials which are not sold as part of the landscaping services shall be permissible between certain hours. The mulch and stone dust, again, there's a fine line. Where is this nursery material, where is it landscaping material? So some of this stuff I don't have an answer or a good recommendation as to how to address it, but I'm just bringing it up as, I see a potential problem. If we're saying that, they can use equipment to load trees as part, trees and shrubs and plants, somebody comes in and buys 10, 12-foot arborvitaes on a Sunday, sure, you need equipment to load that, but then can they also get 30 yards of mulch, which is a couple of dump trucks to go on and plant those, and how do we get at a reasonable way to accommodate that or not? The bylaw does also speak outside truck traffic. Thought I had this all. At some point in the bylaw, it does speak about a truck traffic. There needs to be a log for public inspection. Public inspection is not just public inspection is the public. So maybe that should just be made clear to the permit holder, should a permit issue. And then so my third part would be some suggested conditions or suggested things to consider as part of the conditions. One is hours of operation of the nursery as a whole, which is somewhat defined in there. Delivery times, also somewhat defined in there, but should be specific in the permit. Hours of operation of machinery, bobcats, blowers, lawnmowers, backhoes, front-end loaders. I've spoken to specifying quantities of products, yards of bulk stuff, like mulch and loam and sand, cords of wood, and amounts of masonry products. I believe that it should be made clear up front that there should be no sales or service of tractors, mowers, blowers, machinery, et cetera. At some point over the winter, at Thayer Nursery, a small retail store I considered a gift shop popped up. And they were selling arts and picture frames and handbags and woven table linens and things of that nature. And you know, some people could say, well, it was fairly benign, and it was done to accommodate some struggling artists. But some people could also say that, look, this is simply a retail store that's not permitted anywhere in the bylaw. As building commissioner, I'd just like to say that the disappointing part about that for me as building commissioner was that it just came about, and there was no Thayer Nursery never came to us and said, hey, can we do this? They just did it. So I think it's important to point that out. With respect to the number of trucks, trailers, bobcats, loaders, it should, conditions on those, especially with the trucks, bobcats, loaders, and backhoes, because that equipment always has to be replaced periodically. So the size and series of those vehicles should remain the same, and that probably should be specified. Because if we just say 5 trucks, well, they do have 5 dump trucks, and they all are, if I'm not mistaken, what we call 6-wheel dump trucks. If they were to replace all of those with 10-wheel dump trucks, if it's not specified, I think it's reasonable to assume that that's a noisier and more offensive operation. So, the farm exemption, and specifically again talking about Thayer Nursery, I believe, as building commissioner, that, and I believe that the board has the right to do this, I believe that if a special permit is granted, then Thayer Nursery should in some way forfeit their right to the farm exemption. Because what can happen, for example, if they're allowed to maintain the farm exemption, they could at any point in time say, okay, we're going to bring in 40 head of cattle. Not that they would, but, or they could, you know, maybe pellet stoves or some sort of technology would become available, and it would be a worthwhile venture for them to build a couple of silos and store some corn. You know, and under the farm exemption, we couldn't deny them a permit for that. You know, I'm using examples that are somewhat of a stretch, but again, this has been a challenge for us and the Board of Appeals over the years. You know, I think that they could very easily say, okay, here are the things we do under the farm exemption now, and we want to continue to do those, and it can be made part of the special permit. So again, that's the board's decision, but it's just a suggestion, something down that avenue, so that we don't spend all this time putting all these conditions on the landscape and nursery business only to have it defeated by the farm exemption, which I think can possibly happen. And then some of the other issues that have come up. Music during festivals. I think we all know that Thayer Nursery has festivals, and maybe a limit should be put on the times that music can play. I think that we somehow should specifically say that they cannot be a construction business. Landscaping business, yes, and all that goes along with that, but when it comes to putting additions, whether it's sunroom, green rooms, stairs, anything attached to the house or the building on the property, they should be prevented from, they've gone from a landscape business to then a construction business, which again, there can be that fine line. There should be something that ensures facilities for employees, specifically bathrooms and things of that nature on the property. That came up relative to another landscape operation, not necessarily fair, but I think it's good to have in there. I also think that they should not be allowed to sell sheds and cabanas and things of that nature. That should be restricted. And then the final thing, both from myself and town council, is that there should be a condition in the special permit that specifically authorizes the town of Milton, myself, or any building commissioner, to inspect the premises at any reasonable time during the operation of, say, a nursery, without the need to make an appointment. This issue was brought up by Thayer Nursery for the town, and although we discounted it as not valid, we believe we have the right to do that. The question came up as to whether or not a judge would agree with that. So we think that it's appropriate and helpful to have that specific condition in a special permit should one issue. And that's all I got.
I thought one of the things you brought up were great points. I'm a bit lazy, and I tried previously to keep up with the notes, but can you summarize those for us and get?
Yeah, so my plan is to, after, I didn't want to put it all in writing right now, because if things, some maybe some things would have gotten resolved, or other things would have come up during this discussion. So after tonight, I'll put this all, reduce this to writing and get it to the board.
Do you think, when you talk about the truck log, do you think that was too much of a burden on there to ask that it to be available to the public? Do you think it should just be available to the building inspector? To the town authority?
Possibly, but it's in the bylaw, no. I mean, it's there.
I think the emphasis on measurable quantities is very helpful for everyone. So it just sets that standard by which that you're either over or under. There's no question. So, but that was very helpful to emphasize that.
What sort of sound attenuation material is best put on a fence? Do you know?
No, I have been looking into that a little bit.
Let us know.
There's another entity in town might be a little further along in that research, so we may be able to pass some information along shortly on that.
The most horrifying thing that you said tonight had to do with 40A8, an appeal to the permit granting authority may be taken by any person aggrieved. It does say, an appeal to the permit granting authority as the zoning ordinance or bylaw may provide. And I guess the question is, I mean, if we are entering into an endless series of litigations, that's something that we have to be advised of. But it does seem to me that since the zoning bylaw doesn't actually provide for an appeal to the planning board. But, well,
Actually, it does.
it does.
I think in section Roman numeral 8.
In any event, we're going to have to, it's got to be really tight, because if we're going to be litigating appeals on their nursery, we're going to need if we issue a permit, it's got to be a really tight permit.
I think laying out the appeal process within the permit would make a lot of sense as well.
And that's, I brought that up because that's the situation we are in. And that's how 40A is laid out.
How many cases do you have?
5 pending in Superior Court, unresolved. And I think what's happening, probably other judges are just waiting to see what happens during this process. That's my own personal opinion. Other attorneys may have other opinions.
Is anything floating around the ZBA?
No, ZBA is up to
It's
date.
quiet.
Quiet at the moment. But seemingly, that's what it's been over the past 2 to 3 years, is just, you know, an enforcement order, or lack thereof, an appeal to the ZBA, a decision by the ZBA, and an appeal to court. And that's the way the law is, that's the way the law is laid out, that's the way it's supposed to work. And both sides have been taking advantage of that, which is available to them.
Well, okay, thanks. Thanks for your thoughts. Does anyone in the board have any other questions? Anyone in the audience have questions for the building inspector? Yes, sir.
I don't understand.
But you have to come up and state your name and speak into the microphone, but don't say you don't understand. Ask him a question.
I'm Phil Johanning, 23 Parkwood Drive. My question is, why does Mr. Prondak keep talking about the Dover Amendment, this farm use thing? Because I've been to Superior Court on a number of occasions, and I've been before the Board of Appeals on a number of occasions. And they say that since the primary use of the property...
They say?
The judge said that because the primary use of the property is not agricultural, it is not protected by the Dover Amendment.
Well, we'll figure this out.
I'm just stating
Well,
that
okay,
that's what the Superior Court
do you
said.
understand the question?
I do.
Okay, well... you
So
can
why do you
answer it.
say that it exists when judges say that it doesn't?
The last court proceeding that I was at,
Which
I
was
forget,
where?
at
When?
Dedham.
But Mr. Johanning, this is not, you can't
But the-
examine the building
I thought I had
inspector.
it